Do not let the Alpha King pass. Commander Voss's order carried across Silver Oath Field just as Kael Thornhart reached the northern road. He stopped without protest. Before him stood more than 10,000 royal wolves, their silver banners stirring beneath a pale winter sky. Beyond them, nearly half a mile away, Elara Vale stood beside the stone platform where she had halted that same army the day before. Kael saw her immediately. The silent Omega who had been banished, dismissed, and nearly erased from the history of her own bloodline was standing beneath the Valorith crest. His mate, alive, free, and separated from him by an army that had already learned to obey her. Kael's escort slowed behind him. Garrick looked across the formations. They are holding the road. Kael already knew. The first companies had closed ranks without advancing. No one threatened him. No weapon was raised. They simply remained where they were, forming a wall of silver and gray between the Alpha King and the woman he had crossed from Nightfang to find. One officer stepped forward. "Your Majesty, Commander Voss requires verification before anyone enters the protected field." Garrick stiffened. "You know who stands before you." "I do," the officer replied. "That is not the question." Kael studied him. Only yesterday, forged commands had nearly sent these soldiers south toward Nightfang. Someone had spoken in Elara's name. Someone had tried to make two kingdoms fear each other before either side could ask for proof. The royal wolves had learned the cost of trusting a title faster than the truth. Kael removed the royal seal from inside his coat and placed it in Garrick's hand. "Give them whatever they need." Garrick hesitated. "Kael, we can request direct passage." "No." Kael looked beyond the banners again. Elara had not moved. Even from this distance, he could see Rowan beside her and Elias near the pavilion entrance. She knew he was here, yet she had not ordered the soldiers aside. Something inside Kael tightened, not with anger, but recognition. Finding her had never meant he had earned the right to reach her. The officer accepted the seal and withdrew. For several long minutes, the road remained closed. Kael waited. Across the field, Elara watched the small dark figure beyond the northern formation. She recognized the way he stood before she could see his face clearly. Still, controlled, refusing to make uncertainty look like strength. Rowan glanced toward her. He came with fewer than 20 escorts. Elara's hands moved. "No army?" "None." Elias emerged carrying a sealed report from Asterwin. "There is something else you need to know before you decide whether he enters." Elara turned. Elias placed the report in her hands. The authorization credential they had traced to 3 days before Princess Mara disappeared had surfaced once more in the historical records. Not recently. Years ago, on the night Elara was banished. Her fingers stopped against the page. For years, exile had felt like the cruel decision that divided her life into before and after. Now the same hidden authority connected that night to her mother's disappearance, the hollow circle, and the false command that had nearly moved 10,000 royal wolves toward Nightfang. Rowan read the final line and went pale. "Someone activated the credential less than an hour before your banishment order was approved." Elara looked toward the northern road again. Kael was still waiting beyond the soldiers. He had finally found his banished mate. But before she allowed 10,000 wolves to step aside, she needed to know whether he had come carrying answers, or whether the truth had followed him there. The report changed the meaning of everything Elara remembered about that night. She stood beside the stone platform while the winter wind moved softly through the royal wolf banners, reading the same lines again as if repetition might reveal what the record refused to explain. The credential had been activated 53 minutes before her banishment was approved. Not after the decision. Before it. Rowan remained beside her. If this record is authentic, someone with access to the old Valorith authority was involved before the council made its ruling. Elias shook his head slightly. "Involved does not mean responsible. We proved the connection before we named the hand behind it." Elara looked at him and nodded. That rule had protected them before. Evidence before suspicion. Truth before fear. Her fingers moved. "Then prove it." Elias accepted the instruction without hesitation. He returned to the pavilion with Rowan while Elara remained outside, watching the northern formation. Kael was still there. He had not demanded entrance. He had not sent Garrick forward with another royal command. He simply waited beyond the line the royal wolves had drawn. Less than an hour earlier, Kael had been in Nightfang when Garrick brought him the discovery that had sent him north. The old credential had appeared in 3 separate records, before Princess Mara disappeared, during the administrative process surrounding Elara's exile, and again in the forged command that nearly sent the royal wolves toward Nightfall. Aldrin had studied the dates in silence. That is not coincidence. No, Kael had answered. But it is not proof of who used it. Garrick placed another document on the table. There is more. The activation on the night of Elara's banishment passed through a clerk authorization later connected to Chancellor Hale's office. Kael's expression had gone still. Hale had already been tied to altered records and hidden decisions. But this reached deeper than one corrupt official. The credential itself was older than Hale's influence. Someone had inherited access to a system designed before Elara was old enough to understand what House Valorith meant. Kael looked toward the northern road. Prepare horses. Aldrin frowned. How many guards? Enough to verify who we are. Not enough to look like an army. That decision was why fewer than 20 riders now waited behind him at Silver Oath Field. Garrick returned from the Royal Wolf checkpoint carrying Kael's seal. They verified it. Kael held out his hand, but Garrick did not immediately return the seal. They also verified our escort list, Nightfang's departure record, and every relay station we used coming north. A faint approval crossed Kael's face. Good. Garrick stared at him. You are pleased they questioned the Alpha King? Yesterday someone nearly moved 10,000 soldiers with a convincing piece of paper. I would be concerned if they learned nothing from it. Garrick finally returned the seal. Across the field, Commander Voss entered Elara's pavilion with a completed verification report. His identity is confirmed. His escort is confirmed. No Nightfang companies followed him north. Elara read the report carefully. Voss waited. There is one more question, Your Highness. She looked up. The Alpha King has passed every verification we required. But this field remains under your protection. His voice softened. Do you permit him to approach? Elara looked through the pavilion opening. Between her and Kael stood thousands of royal wolves. But the greater distance had been built long before any soldier arrived. She could open the road with one decision. She could not erase what had placed that road between them. Her hands rose slowly. Let him come alone. The first line of royal wolves moved only after Commander Voss gave the signal. Then the second line followed. A narrow passage opened through the field, stretching from the northern road toward the stone platform where Elara waited. Kael handed his coat clasp and remaining ceremonial seal to Garrick. Stay here. Garrick glanced at the long corridor ahead. You are certain? She said alone. Kael stepped forward. No escort followed him. Thousands of royal wolves stood on either side of the passage, silent beneath silver banners shifting in the cold wind. Their attention followed him, but no one bowed. Kael did not expect them to. These soldiers had spent the previous day discovering that a royal title could be copied onto a false command. Respect would have to mean more than obedience now. Elara watched him approach from nearly half a mile away. Every step shortened the field while leaving another distance untouched. She remembered standing before councils that had spoken about her as though silence meant ignorance. She remembered leaving Nightfang under a judgment she had not possessed the power to challenge. Now the Alpha King crossed a field protected by soldiers who would not let him reach her until she chose it. Kael reached the final row and stopped about 12 feet from her. He did not close the remaining distance. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Kael spoke. I found you. Elara's expression barely changed. Her hands rose. Rowan translated from behind her. You knew where I was. Finding me was never the difficult part. Kael absorbed the words without defending himself. No, it was not. Elara signed again. Why are you here? Kael removed a folded document from inside his coat and placed it on the edge of the stone platform. Because Nightfang found the same credential your investigators found in Asterwin. It was activated during the administrative process surrounding your banishment. Elias stepped closer and compared the document with the Asterwin report. The root sequence matches. Rowan looked between the records. Then the credential used before Mara disappeared was still active years later. And it surfaced again in the forged order yesterday, Kael said. Elara looked toward the royal wolves surrounding them. 3 moments separated by years were now connected by one hidden authority. Mara's disappearance. Elara's banishment. The attempted march toward Nightfang. Her hands rose. Then we do not ask who hated me. Rowan translated. Elara continued. We ask who benefited every time I disappeared. Elias went still. Kael's eyes narrowed as the question settled over him. For a moment, the investigation seemed to fall away, leaving only the distance that still remained between them. Kael looked at Elara as though there were 100 things he could have said and none he had earned the right to say yet. I know finding the truth does not undo what happened to you. Elara held his gaze. Her hands moved slowly. No, but what you do with the truth will tell me who you are now. Kael gave a single nod. Then I will start there. Neither of them moved closer. They did not need to. For the first time since his arrival, the silence between them felt less like a wall and more like a space neither was willing to fill with another lie. Before anyone could say more, a royal wolf messenger hurried from the western relay station carrying a sealed packet. He stopped beside Voss. Commander, another order just arrived from Night Fawn. Voss broke the outer seal and read the first line. His face changed. Kael saw it immediately. What does it say? Voss looked toward Elara. By authority of the Alpha King, the Valorith heir is to be returned to Night Fawn under royal custody immediately. Kael did not reach for the order. I gave no such command. The words were quiet, but Commander Voss heard them clearly. Around the platform, the nearest royal wolves became still. Voss looked down at the seal again. The authentication appears valid. So did the order that nearly sent your companies south, Kael replied. Elara watched his face. There was no surprise in it now, only recognition. Someone had tried the same strategy again, but this time the lie had arrived while the man it claimed to represent was standing less than 12 feet away. Kael held out his hand. Read the exact wording. Voss obeyed. By authority of His Majesty Kael Thornhart, Alpha King of Night Fawn, the surviving Valorith heir is to be transferred immediately into royal custody for her protection and returned to Night Fawn under secured escort. Kael's expression changed at one phrase. For her protection, Garrick, still waiting beyond the open corridor, called toward them. That wording is not used in Night Fawn custody orders. Kael nodded. Because there is no custody order. Elara's hands moved. Rowan translated. Then verify the relay. Voss passed the packet to a communications officer, who hurried toward the western station. No one moved until he returned several minutes later carrying the routing record. The message passed through 2 recognized Night Fawn relays, he said. But the original authorization did not begin at either one. Elias stepped closer. Where did it begin? The officer looked at Kael. The source mark is concealed. Kael finally took the document, studying the authorization line. They learned from yesterday. The first forged command tried to make Night Fawn fear Elara. This one is meant to make Elara fear Night Fawn. The truth settled heavily across the platform. Elara looked at the words royal custody. Once, official language had helped remove her from the only life she knew. Now someone was using the same language too. Make protection sound like possession. Kael folded the false order once and handed it back to Voss. Then he turned toward the thousands watching from beyond the platform. No one here will obey this. Voss studied him. Your Majesty, until the source is verified, the field remains under Valorith protection. It should. Kael's answer came immediately. And no one speaks for me where she is concerned. Elara's gaze lifted to his. Kael continued, his voice carrying farther now. She is my mate. She is not my prisoner. She does not return to Night Fawn because a document commands it. She does not return because I command it. A silence spread through the nearest formations. Kael looked only at Elara when he finished. She goes where she chooses. Elara felt something shift inside her, small but undeniable. It was not forgiveness. Forgiveness could not be summoned by one correct sentence. But for the first time, Kael had stood before an army and publicly surrendered a power others assumed he possessed over her. He had not asked to be rewarded for it. Elias looked down at the 2 credential records in his hands. There is another problem. Everyone turned toward him. He placed the Night Fawn order beside the record from Elara's banishment. Look at the authorization marks. Voss leaned closer. Rowan drew a quiet breath. The marks were not identical, but the structure beneath them was unmistakable. Kael's eyes hardened. The same root credential. Elias nodded. Which means whoever influenced Elara's banishment may still be using the same authority today. Elara stared at the documents. 3 events were no longer connected by suspicion. They were connected by a system. Her mother's disappearance. Her exile. The attempt to move 10,000 royal wolves. And now a false order demanding her return to Night Fawn. Her hands rose. Rowan watched carefully. Elara signed one question. Who keeps trying to decide where I belong? Before Rowan could translate, The communications officer returned from the relay station, pale with disbelief. "We uncovered part of the hidden source mark." Voss stepped toward him. "Whose authorization is it?" The officer looked at Elara. "Not whose. Your Highness." "What?" "The record identifies the sender as the second keeper." The word second keeper changed the silence around them. Elara looked from the hidden source mark to Elias, but he seemed just as unsettled. Mara's recovered protocol had established the keeper's halt as an emergency safeguard capable of stopping the royal wolves when lawful command became uncertain. Nothing they had found had clearly identified a second office connected to that protection. Could this be a forged designation too? Kael asked. Elias did not answer immediately. He examined the routing record, then Mara's ledger. Possibly. But whoever created this message knew terminology that was removed from the surviving public records more than 20 years ago. Elara signed. "Then we verify before we believe it." Rowan translated, and Kael gave a small nod. Agreed. Voss ordered copies of the source mark brought from the Western Relay Station while Elias returned to the Pavilion archives. Kael remained where Elara had permitted him to stand. He did not move closer. That restraint mattered more than she wanted it to. For years, powerful people had treated decisions about her life as privileges attached to their titles. Where she lived, what she deserved, whether her silence made her less worthy of being heard. Now the most powerful man in Nightfang stood 12 feet away and waited because she had not invited him nearer. When Elias returned, he carried a thin leather ledger protected inside a faded silver cover. This was stored with Mara's emergency protocols. He opened it carefully. Most of the page contained old command classifications, but one line had been partially erased. Original Keeper, Mara Valerith. Beneath it, only fragments remained. Second Keeper. Status. Elias looked at Elara. The designation is real. Rowan drew a slow breath. Kael studied the damaged entry. Then Mara held the original office, and someone else was appointed to preserve its safeguards if she disappeared. That is what the surviving record suggests, Elias said. Elara inherited the authority to invoke the Keeper's halt through Mara's protocol. That does not make these offices identical. Kael turned his attention back to the damaged entry. Is there a name? Not anymore. Elias turned several pages. But there may be something better. He pointed to a sequence of authorization marks. Each keeper possessed a distinct root pattern. Mara's ended with the Valerith household seal. The second pattern ended with an unfamiliar crescent mark. Voss brought the newly copied routing record beside it. The patterns matched. The false custody order had not merely borrowed an old title. It had been authenticated through authority once recognized by Mara's own system. Elara felt the implications settle heavily. Someone with legitimate access had either survived for more than 20 years or passed that authority to another person. Her hands moved. Was the second keeper allowed to command the royal wolves? Elias read further. No. The second authority could verify emergency records, preserve sealed succession evidence, and maintain continuity if the original keeper disappeared. Kael's expression sharpened. Then whoever holds it was never meant to control Elara. Correct. Elias looked at the false order. Someone is using protective authority as command authority. Elara stared at the words. The pattern felt painfully familiar. Protection had been used to justify exile. Protection had been used to demand custody. Protection had become a language for removing choice. Kael seemed to understand the same thing. Whoever created the lie may have influenced what happened to you, he said. Elara met his eyes. Kael continued before she could respond. But that does not erase every failure around it. Someone else may have written the falsehood. I still should have questioned what I was told. I should have looked beyond the records placed in front of me. Elara did not move. This was not an apology designed to end the conversation. He was not asking her to forgive him because a hidden enemy existed. He was separating manipulation from responsibility. Her hands rose slowly. Rowan watched. That is the first true thing you have said about it. Kael accepted the words without looking away. Then Voss approached with another archive sheet. We found the second keeper's earliest surviving activation. Elias took the record. His face changed as he read the date. Elara stepped closer. The authorization had been used once after Mara disappeared, years before Elara's banishment. Beside the activation was a single surviving instruction. Preserve the heir until the appointed return. Elara stared at the sentence. Someone had not merely known she existed. Someone had been waiting for her. Elara read the surviving instruction again. Preserve the air until the appointed return. The words sounded protective, yet everything they had uncovered warned her not to trust language simply because it sounded kind. Her hands moved. Who appointed the return? Rowan translated. Elias searched the surrounding entries, but several lines had been deliberately removed. The record does not say. Kael looked toward the thousands of royal wolves beyond the platform. Then we should not assume the second keeper was protecting Elara for the right reasons. Elias nodded. Or that the person using the authority now is the original holder. Voss ordered the archive teams to compare every surviving crescent mark while Elara studied the false custody order again. Something about it bothered her. The sender had access to rare authority, old terminology, and hidden relay routes. Why waste all of that on a command Kael could deny the moment he saw it? Her fingers rose. They knew he was here. Rowan translated, then stopped. Kael understood immediately. The order was not meant to fool me. Elara nodded. It was meant for everyone watching us. The realization moved through the group. Thousands of royal wolves had seen Kael arrive. They had seen him held outside the protected field. Now a document bearing Nightfang authority demanded Elara's custody. The message was designed to turn uncertainty into division before either side could verify the truth. Voss looked toward his commanders. Then the field itself is the audience. Kael's gaze settled on Elara. And whoever sent it expected us to react before we spoke to each other. Elara remembered the previous forged order. One lie had tried to make Kael fear her. This one tried to make her fear him. The method was almost elegant. In its simplicity, keep them apart. Let suspicion finish the work. Kael stepped no closer, but his voice carried toward the nearest formations. Hear this clearly. I issued no custody order. More officers turned toward him. No one speaks for me where Elara Vale is concerned. She is my mate, but that gives me no right to decide where she belongs. Elara felt the words land differently now, not because they erased the past. They did not. But Kael was saying them before witnesses who would remember whether he lived by them later. He continued. She returns to Nightfang only if she chooses Nightfang. She remains here if she chooses here. No title of mine changes that. Voss looked toward Elara. She gave a small nod, but no command followed. The royal wolves remained in formation. The narrow passage through the field stayed exactly as it was, neither closing against Kael nor opening farther for him. Kael glanced toward the thousands of silver banners and then back at Elara. He understood. The soldiers had verified who he was. Elara had permitted him to enter, but neither fact erased the reason they had stood between them in the first place. 12 feet still separated Kael from Elara. He did not cross them. Rowan watched him, then looked toward Elara. No one spoke. Kael had crossed nearly 60 miles from Nightfang. He had waited outside the field rather than command his way through it. He had accepted responsibility without using conspiracy as an excuse. Still, he left the final distance untouched. Elara understood what he was offering her. Not surrender. Choice. Her hands rose. We follow the evidence together. Rowan translated softly. Kael nodded. Together. He remained where he was. Before either could say more, Elias called from the pavilion. He was holding a newly recovered archive sheet bearing the crescent mark. Elara, you need to see this. They moved toward the table separately, preserving the distance Kael had chosen not to take. Elias placed the record before them. The second keeper authorization had been activated repeatedly across the years, but one date had been circled in Mara's private notation. Elara recognized it immediately. It was the night of her banishment. Beside the date were 4 surviving words. The heir must leave. The heir must leave. Elara stared at the 4 words until everything around them seemed to recede. The instruction had been issued on the night of her banishment, using the same second keeper authority now hiding behind false commands. Kael stood 12 feet away without speaking. He knew better than to tell her what the discovery should mean. Elias turned the recovered sheet toward the lantern. There is more beneath the damaged section. Rowan leaned closer. Can you read it? Not all of it. Elias traced the faded marks. But this was not written as a punishment order. It was filed under continuity protection. Elara's hands rose. Protection sent me away? Rowan translated. Elias met her eyes. Possibly. But we do not know whether the person invoking protection was actually protecting you. Kael looked at the earlier instruction beside it. Preserve the heir until the appointed return. These records contradict each other only if we assume the same person controlled the second keeper authority every time. Voss understood first. The credential may have changed hands. Elias nodded. Or someone learned how to imitate it. Elara looked toward the field. Royal wolf companies were beginning their scheduled preparations to return home, yet thousands still remained beneath the silver banners. The narrow passage that had allowed Kael to approach remained open, but the greater formation still held around them. She thought of another road years ago, the one she had taken away from Nightfang, believing everyone who mattered had accepted that she did not belong. Her hands moved. What happened immediately after I left? Kael's expression tightened. Nightfang sealed your council file before sunrise. Rowan frowned. Who authorized that? That is what I should have asked then. Kael did not soften the admission. I accepted the ruling as complete because every required seal appeared to be present. Elara watched him. There it was again. Not an excuse. Responsibility. Kael continued. By the time I questioned parts of the record, the original witness statements were already inaccessible. Elias looked sharply at him. How long after her banishment? 9 days. Elias opened Mara's ledger and searched the activation list. His finger stopped. There was a second keeper authorization 9 days later. Silence returned. Voss stepped closer. What did it authorize? Elias read carefully. Archive preservation. Restricted access. Succession material only. Kael looked at Elara. Someone closed the evidence behind you. Elara signed. Or preserved it. Yes, Elias said. We still cannot know which. That uncertainty mattered. For once, no one rushed to fill the unknown with the answer they wanted. Elara felt something inside her settle. She had spent years believing exile proved she had been unwanted. Now evidence suggested something far more complicated. Perhaps someone had wanted her gone. Perhaps someone else had needed her outside Nightfang to keep her beyond the reach of whoever controlled the records. Either way, her suffering did not become less real simply because its purpose might have been different. Kael seemed to understand. If someone believed sending you away would keep you safe, they still made the choice for you. Elara turned toward him. He continued quietly. Protection without your voice is still a choice taken from you. Her expression softened by the smallest degree. Then a relay officer entered carrying the completed comparison from Asterwin. We matched the Crescent authorization across 7 surviving records. Elias took the report, and the officer hesitated. The second keeper credential was used after Princess Mara disappeared, on the night of Elara's banishment, 9 days afterward, and yesterday. Voss frowned. Then whoever holds it may still be alive. There is one more activation, the officer said. This morning. Kael's gaze sharpened. Where? The officer looked toward the western road. Not Asterwin. Not Nightfang. He placed the routing map on the table and pointed to an abandoned royal relay station nearly 40 miles west of Silver Oath Field. Beside the location was a message consisting of 6 words. Elara read them once. Then again. Bring the air. I remember Mara. Bring the air. I remember Mara. No one in the pavilion spoke for several seconds. Elara kept her eyes on the 6 words while the winter wind pressed softly against the canvas walls. The message offered exactly what she wanted most. Someone who might remember her mother. That was why she did not trust it. Her hands moved. Too convenient. Rowan translated. Kael nodded. Someone spent years hiding behind records. Now they suddenly want to be found. Elias examined the routing map. The western relay station was abandoned 19 years ago after the old royal road shifted east. It should not have an active authorization line. Voss pointed to the crescent mark. Yet someone used the second keeper credential there this morning. Elara signed again. Could the message have been relayed from somewhere else? Yes, Elias said. Which means the station could be a meeting place, a false destination, or simply another layer between us and the sender. Kael studied the map without touching it. Then we verify the station before anyone goes there. Voss immediately offered a royal wolf escort. Kael did not answer for Elara. He looked at her instead. That small restraint did not escape her. Only a day earlier, more than 10,000 wolves had waited for her command. Now those same soldiers remained across the field, and the Alpha King stood 12 feet away, waiting for something simpler than an order. Her choice. Elara signed. Send scouts. No royal banners. No announcement that I am coming. Voss bowed. I will send 4 riders by separate routes. Elias added. And we can test the relay from here. If the sender responds to a question only Mara's circle could understand, we learn something without exposing Elara. Rowan looked toward her. What question? Elara touched the pendant beneath her cloak. She remembered the fragments Mara had left behind, the systems designed to make power harder to steal, the strange patience hidden inside every safeguard. Then her hands moved. Ask what the keeper protects when the crown is wrong. Elias wrote the question exactly. The relay officer carried it away. Kael looked across the field before speaking. You could return to Nightfang with me. Elara turned toward him. He continued before the words could sound like another claim. Or you could stay here. Or go to Asterwin. I am telling you what I want, not deciding what you should do. Her expression softened slightly. Her hands rose. What do you want? Kael looked at her for a long moment. I want the chance to become someone you choose without needing fate, a crown, or an old bond to make the choice for you. Elara felt the answer settle somewhere deeper than apology. She did not give him the forgiveness he had not asked her to rush. Instead, she signed. Then keep choosing truth when it costs you something. I will. Commander Voss had heard enough. He looked at Elara, but she gave no order. This time, none was necessary. Voss turned toward the field and raised one hand. The nearest officers understood. Royal wolves began stepping aside. One formation moved, then another, and the motion traveled across Silver Oath Field beneath thousands of silver banners. The narrow corridor widened until nothing remained between Elara and Kael but open ground. More than 10,000 wolves had stood between them when he arrived. Now those same soldiers were not obeying a command from Elara or surrendering to the authority of a king. They were making room for a choice. Kael did not move. Even with the road completely open, he waited. The final 12 feet still belonged to her. Elara looked at him, then stepped forward. One step, then another. She crossed the distance slowly until she stood beside him. She did not take his hand. She did not need to. Her hands rose. Beside me, not ahead of me. Rowan's voice softened as she translated. Kael looked at Elara and answered, beside you. Elias returned with the relay officer carrying a narrow strip of paper. We received an answer. Elara's attention shifted toward him. Elias read it aloud. When the crown is wrong, the keeper protects the choice the crown cannot own. The words echoed everything Mara's system had seemed designed to preserve. Choice before possession. Evidence before authority. Elias turned the strip over. There is a second line. The heir was never meant to remain in Nightfang after Mara disappeared. Rowan stared at him. Then the banishment was planned. Elias shook his head. We still do not know that. The relay officer placed another record beside the message. But the scouts found something before reaching the station. The Western Road contains an old Valorith boundary marker that does not appear on any current map. Elara looked at the crescent symbol drawn beneath the report. It matched the second keeper authorization. Sometime later, as the winter light began to fade beyond Silver Oath Field, Voss returned with the first scout's sealed note. The relay station is occupied. Kael straightened. By whom? Voss looked directly at Elara. One elderly royal wolf. He refused to give his name. He said he will speak to only one person. Elara already knew the answer. Princess Mara's daughter. By sunrise, fewer than 3,000 royal wolves remained at Silver Oath Field. The others had departed in scheduled companies, carrying no command south and no new allegiance north. The great wall that had stood between Elara and Kael was gone now, but the road ahead of them had become more uncertain. Elara stood beside Kael over the western map, while Voss repeated the scout's report. The old royal wolf is alone. He has food, firewood, and access to the abandoned relay. He made no attempt to leave when our riders arrived. Elias looked at the crescent mark beside the station. Did he claim to be the second keeper? No. He refused every question except one. Voss turned toward Elara. He asked whether Mara's daughter still chooses for herself. Elara's hands moved immediately. What did the scout say? That no one would answer for you. Something softened in her expression. Kael noticed, but he said nothing. Elara studied the road west. 40 miles was not far, but after everything the hidden credential had touched, distance was not the danger. Assumption was. Her fingers rose. We go after the station is verified. Kael nodded. Your decision. She looked at him. You are coming? If you permit it. Elara held his gaze for a moment, then sighed. Beside me. Not ahead of me. Kael answered quietly. Beside you. There was no ceremony in the exchange, yet it carried more weight than any declaration. Made before a court. Hours earlier, more than 10,000 royal wolves had stood between them. Kael could have demanded passage because he was a king. Elara could have commanded the field because she carried the keeper's authority. Neither had chosen possession. When the road finally opened, they had chosen the same direction. Elias interrupted with a newly decoded archive sheet. Before you leave, there is one more record. He placed Mara's ledger beside the second keeper activations. The Crescent credential was not transferred after Mara disappeared. According to this registry, it remained assigned to the same guardian. Rowan leaned closer. There is still no name. Not here. Elias turned the page. A narrow strip had survived along the binding. But there is a designation. Royal Wolf. Western Watch. Personal witness to Princess Mara. Elara touched the pendant beneath her cloak. The old wolf waiting 40 miles away might not simply remember Mara. He might have served beside her. Kael looked at the activation dates. Then why remain hidden for more than 20 years? Elias answered carefully. Perhaps Mara ordered him to. Elara signed. Or someone made hiding necessary. No one disagreed. A relay officer entered carrying confirmation from the scouts. The station had been checked from the outside perimeter. No additional riders, banners, or hidden companies had been found nearby. The elderly wolf had given them one sealed object and instructed them to send it to Elara before she decided whether to come. Voss placed a small, weathered envelope on the table. Elara recognized the handwriting before Elias broke the old verification seal. Mara's handwriting. Inside was a single folded page. Elara read the first line silently. My daughter, if this reaches you, then the crown has already failed you. Her eyes moved faster. Mara had written that the second keeper's duty was never to preserve a throne. It was to preserve Elara's freedom long enough for her to choose what kind of heir she would become. Then Elara reached the final lines. If they send you away, do not believe exile means abandonment. Leave. Live. Let them think the bloodline is broken. The second keeper will watch the road until it is safe for you to return. Elara closed her eyes. Mara's own words revealed another possibility. Mara had not ordered Elara's exile. Nothing in the letter proved that. She had prepared for the possibility that others might one day force her daughter away, and she had built a safeguard meant to preserve Elara's freedom if that day came. Someone had known exile was possible and had prepared a way for Elara to survive it. That did not make the banishment kind. It did not erase the choices made by those who accepted it. It only meant abandonment had never been the whole truth. Kael remained silent beside her. He did not try to turn the revelation into forgiveness for himself or Nightfawn. When Elara finally looked at him, his expression held only one question. What do you choose now? Her hands moved. Rowan translated softly. I want the truth from the man at the western station. Voss nodded. We can leave within the hour. Elias began gathering the records, but Elara stopped him. One more question. Her fingers moved slowly. If the second keeper was protecting me, who used his authority yesterday? Elias looked at the crescent mark on the forged order. The answer changed his face. Someone who learned how to copy it. Kael turned toward the western road. The old royal wolf might hold the truth about Mara, but somewhere else, another person possessed enough of his secret authority to imitate him. Elara folded her mother's letter and placed it beside her heart. She had spent years believing the road of exile led away from everything she belonged to. Now she understood that someone had been watching that road all along. And 40 miles west, the last wolf who remembered Mara was waiting to tell her why.